guys have any thoughts on him, about his actions, like why he did what he did? He was justified.
I'm not saying it was justified, but it kind of makes sense. I mean, he was lonely, and then he comes back and he's embarrassed because his wife cheated on him. And then, and then the person he friends in the community turns out to be the guy his wife cheated on. And so, all of these things are collapsing on him, and so I guess he has nothing else to do, but because it's unfair to him, so he just dedicates his life on seeking revenge.
But I still don't think he was justified. Because, a marriage is making things work. And obviously this is, a really big bump in the road. But, he should go and talk to Hester and see what was going on. And, say, I'm sorry I was gone for so long, but, let's try to work this out and get back to where we were instead of, I'm going to go mess with the guy you got knocked up by. So I don't think he was justified. He should have. There were a ton of ways that he could have been better. Sorry for language.
I think the problem with that solution is that Hester never really loved Roger Chillingworth at all. It wasn't love for either of them. So really, they shouldn't have gotten married in the first place, I think.
Yeah, I was thinking about that because he kind of had this idea when he saw Hester, he kind of envisioned this perfect life that he would have because he's really smart, and so he would probably have a successful career, and then he wants to have a family, to just go along with it. And so he sees Hester, and she's this beautiful young girl, and he's kind of trying to redo his life by getting married and just going forward, but he's doing it for his own personal gain. He isn't thinking of, how am I going to make this woman happy for the rest of my life, Is she the one I really want to marry and make happy? And so she kind of just doesn't really have that compassion that a husband has, and so she tries to find that on her own, and it kind of just messes up everything. If it had been different, then she could have, had the love with Chillingworth, and then, Dimmesdale, and then Chillingworth could have maybe found joy in something else without trying to force it.
I think he eventually sees that he's not being compassionate, though. At the jail when they're talking, after he's acting like the doctor or whatever, how he's oh, I wronged you, it was my wrong when I married you. So I think that he kind of realizes that he was marrying her for his own selfish reasons, and that he wasn't actually doing it for love.
I definitely don't think he should have punished, he made Dimmesdale feel so guilty for so many years, even, especially when he found out what his position was. And he kept pressing him talking about how he thought his sickness might have been part of something to do with his conscience and something he had done that he was guilty for. And he kept pressing Dimmesdale for this, but Dimmesdale wouldn't really tell him. But when he finally found out, I think it was not justified at all, that he should have, at least backed off a little bit.
So what do you guys think would be the darkest, for example, do you think that hatred would be darker, or vengeance would be darker, or guilt? Which one do you think would be the darkest of all the dark things you can do? That makes sense.
I think hatred, because Chillingworth is prime example on what hatred does to a person. He literally dies because of it.
So, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, because from the beginning of the book, he was this scholar, and I don't know, yeah, and he just changed to this devilish figure just because of hatred. So you're right, I think it can do a lot to a person.
I think it's vengeance, though, because I think that hatred, though it, affects you, it doesn't really, affect anyone else. If you hate someone and you don't, do anything about it, then it's not, gonna be bad for them. But if you have this hatred and then you decide that vengeance is, what's gonna be best for you, see, he ended up bringing down Dimmesdale even more than he was already, putting the guilt on himself. Don't like that. And he stop. And he also was bringing down himself just even more, and because he started thriving off his vengeance. So I think that's what really killed him, was his revenge.
Yeah, I think that vengeance is kind of a higher form of hatred in a way, because if you hate someone, like you'll hate somebody, but you'll kind of get over it. But if you hate somebody so much that you think you need to seek revenge for it, I think it just shows the level of like confusion and hatred in someone if they think that they need to seek vengeance for it.
Well, Chillingsworth's vengeance is so powerful that it literally like corrupts him. Like we see him at first, he's like this nice doctor person, and then through the end people start looking at him and he's like an evil sort of face, and at the end he literally is corrupted by his vengeance and it kills him from the inside out.
So then who do you guys think suffered the most in the book?
I don't know. I have kind of this thing that it's kind of between Dimmesdale and Chillingworth, because Chillingworth suffers in a way that he's suffering because he's trying to get some gain or some solace from kind of this revenge towards Dimmesdale. He wants to find kind of this ultimate solution, while Dimmesdale just feels like he can't live with himself because he feels so bad for what he's done. And so it kind of is these two different times of suffering, and it just kind of depends on how you view it, who's suffering more.
Yeah, and I agree with that, because I think for a while both of them are reminders of like what they're suffering of, for both Chillingworth and Dimmesdale, especially when they start living with each other.
Yeah, I think that Dimmesdale suffers the most individually in the story, but I think that Hester has to deal with the most suffering because she has to juggle Dimmesdale's guilt for kind of ruining Chillingworth's life, and she has to deal with Chillingworth trying to seek revenge on Dimmesdale, and then Pearl kind of just keeps reminding her of those two and their feud towards each other over her, sort of. And so I feel like just her having to think about all those different things makes her suffering a little bit worse than everyone else's.
I think like internal suffering is much worse though than external. Like Hester's all out in the open, and yes, Pearl is a reminder of the sin she committed, but also Pearl brings her a lot of happiness. Like she loves Pearl, and I think that's what helps her get through her life too, is to thrive on Pearl's happiness and being a motherly figure to her, while Dimmesdale just constantly, every day of his life, I mean, he creates sermons to the public about sin just because of, and he talks about how he should probably take his own advice of this sin, you know what I mean? And he feels so guilty. It's to the point where it's just driving him mad, and he gets up in the middle of the night and goes up to the scaffold and, kneels on it because he feels all the guilt from all the sins. And if he would have released it sooner, he probably would have still suffered, but a lot less than what he actually did.
Who do you guys think is a symbol of Dimmesdale's character? Like, what does he represent, like, in our own lives, or even just in the book?
I think relating it to our lives, we've all, or I don't know, at least I have had like a person that like we like love and like have a high standard, and then you like find out the truth about them, and it like totally corrupts this holy idea you had about them, and it turns out they're not the person you thought they would be.
Also, like, brings the idea, like, Dimmesdale, I don't know, he doesn't own up to, I feel like he should have owned up to his sin from the beginning. I don't know, I think it was kind of selfish of him, even though he justifies it with being a pastor and still continuing to help others because he knows he won't be able to after he confesses, but I still feel like in our daily lives, like, if we commit sins and things, that we don't always confess for what we've done or apologize to people even though we should. And, like, I know that happens all the time, and even if it's little things, but, like, yeah, I just feel like Dimmesdale, like, should have confessed. Really.
Yeah, I respectfully disagree. I feel like it was important that he didn't confess right away, because even though in some ways it is kind of selfish that he didn't, I feel that it really helped a lot of the people in the town, even if it was even if he was sort of not a good example, he definitely helped the people in the town. He was always there for them, like, to help them with their struggles in life, and like tried to help everybody with their problems. And he was just there for everybody, even though he wasn't completely there for himself. I feel like him as a symbol of relief for everyone else was important, and if he would have confessed, he wouldn't have been able to do that for everyone in the town.
I also feel like, sorry Ryan, I also feel like he could have been like a better pastor if he would have admitted it, because people would have seen it, like he does sin just like them, and it would have like maybe made them like take his sermons real to heart, because he has like the experience and he knows what he's going through and he knows what they're going through, and like he understands, and he's already come to terms with his sin, and he's already like repented and like gotten back on God's good side, I guess. And so he's still like has the power to do these sermons, and I think that they could be even stronger if he would have confessed.
And it also would have taken some of the pressure off of Hester. Like, she wouldn't have been in, like, she wouldn't have gotten the full force of all the condemnation and judgment and everything. Like, if he had come in and stepped up and been like, hey, I also sinned and we committed adultery. Like, and that would have, like, kind of helped Hester out. And she wouldn't have received so much just, like, hate and condemnation and not being nice to.
But if Dimsdale I just saw this, if he had admitted his sin the same time Hester did, well, Hester kind of was found out, but if he had, like, admitted to that, then he wouldn't have been the one who was giving her the more lenient punishment. They probably both would have had to either die or be kind of pushed out of the community. And so it's kind of, you never know what would happen if Dimsdale would have confessed, because he has these two conflicting parts of himself that could have gone in two different directions.
So then what do you guys think is the significance of them not having their happy ending and not being able to live together, instead Dimsdale having to die or choosing to die?
I think it just shows like that your actions like have consequences, I guess. So just that like everything they went through, and like yeah, you always want to see that happy ending, but that's not always how it happens, and like their lives could have been different if this like bump in the road hadn't occurred. But so just that their actions led up to this, and so it teaches us, which still applies to today, that our actions do have consequences.
Yeah, I agree. It's more realistic, because not everyone who commits sin ends up having kind of a happy resolution to it. Sometimes they have to just live with it and have a consequence that's with them forever.
One thing that Hester says is how she believes that living her life like that, like with the punishment, is in the end going to hopefully make her kind of have a clean slate in front of when she enters heaven, or when she's judged or whatever. What do you guys think about that? Do you think that her punishment is going to actually help her so that she has that kind of a clean slate?
Yeah, I feel like she, like through the book, she starts to help people and stuff, and people start to, like the Scarlet Letter starts to represent Abel instead of adulterer. I feel like throughout the book she just kind of she helps people and makes up kind of for her sin, and I feel like I think that like eventually she does end up, it does give her more of a clean slate than if she hadn't done that. So.
Yeah, because she like does a lot for all the poor, and she does a lot of charity work, and I feel like she's trying to work off her sin, you know what I mean? Because she feels guilty, but she feels like she should still wear it, but that she can move on and just help others. And because I know, and then there's the part like where Roger, when she talks to him in the forest, and he tells her talks about all the good deeds she's done, and asks if she would like to remove the Scarlet Letter. How they were going to talk about it in the town, but she refuses because she feels like she doesn't deserve to remove it. I don't know, that's what I think.
I think punishment isn't for other people. Punishment is to change yourself, and Esther really was changed by the end of the book, so I don't think she was guilty at all at the end.
Who else do you guys think changed at the end of the book? Anything dramatically or significantly?
Well, Dimsdale definitely changed. Like, he was staying the same way for 7 years, racked with pain and guilt, but then finally talking to Hester, and he decided that he wanted to confess him to everybody. That was a really big change for him when that side went out.
I also think that Pearl changed because, I mean, like Miss Bishop was saying,